Hey everyone, just a few quick things before we get started. Don't forget to sign the attendance sheet. It's just real simple. Just ask you 2 questions. Kind of looks like this. But that's pretty much it. Please enjoy. Hope you all learned something. Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be going over worksheet 17. If you have any questions about this worksheet or any other worksheets, feel free to stop at my office hours. Okay. Well, today's topic is 2D arrays. Alright, well, let's get started. So the first question I have is, what is a 2D array? So a 2D array is kind of like several arrays put together. And I think what would really help you to visualize this, so you can kind of think of it as like, in a normal array, you have like a list of boxes, right? And so if you kind of think about that, you put an up and down array in each box. Like I'll show the next question will make it it's gonna make it easier. So what does a 2D array look like? So what really helps me is, I think a 2D array looks like a table or like a grid, right? Okay, so let's say like this is our array, right? And then so like let's say this is the first array. You got element 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then go on the side and mark those as well. 1, 2, oh, sorry. Classic blunder. 0, 1, 2, 3. And then, so it's kind of like a grid, right? So if I was trying to get into this box, like this one, it would be like 5, 2, right? You would just kind of find the column and the row in which it lines up. So it kind of looks like a grid. Okay? So my next question is, how do you declare a 2D array? And so to declare a 2D array, it's really similar to declaring a normal array. So let's say we're trying to declare the array above. You would just do you start with the rows. So this has 4 rows, and then the columns has 9 columns. And so it's just like this. So which is kind of similar to a regular array, except you have the added dimension right next to it. And so just remember that rows go first, otherwise you'd get an array with 9 rows and 4 columns. So it'd be the opposite way of that skinny rectangle. But that's how you declare a 2D array. So to initialize a 2D array, let's say we're going to be working with a smaller array. Let's see, 2 rows, 3 columns. So initializing it is very similar to how you initialize a normal array. Basically, so you start off with your thing like this, like you're declaring it, $, curly brackets, and then you get to type out all the numbers. Okay, and so there's a few different ways that you can initialize it. You can either do a second set of curly brackets, and then so you want to take it row by row. So if we had 2 rows with 3 columns, it looks something like 1, 2, 3, and then a comma after that, and then like 4, 5, 6, and then another curly closing bracket. The second way you can do it is you don't have to use brackets. But the brackets are really for clarity, so I would suggest doing it, because if you see here, you can see that our first row is going to look something like 1, 2, 3 into 4, 5, 6, right? You can do it without brackets, but it'd just be kind of like you were declaring a normal array. But so the computer can figure it out, but as you can see, it's not as easy to us, so we can immediately see where the numbers are broken up. So basically, the extra brackets help visually separate it, so it's easier for you to see, but you can do it both ways. Okay, so my next question is, how do you put an element in a 2D array? And so this is going to be almost similar to how declaring a 2D array was. So you'd have your array name and your row number and your column number. And then you could set that equal to whatever you wanted. So in this case, I didn't even know. I did 2, 5, right? And we set it equal to 6. So it's row first, then column. So it's essentially, it's very similar to setting a value to an actual array. You just can't forget to add the second dimension. Okay, so this next question is, how would you fill a 2D array? And so just like normal arrays, we are going to be using for loops. So we can get started with that one. Let's see, 0, sorry, I can't type today. If we had something that looked like this, like let's say we're having like the user put it in just to make it like, so we're not setting it all equal to one number. So like let's say you were doing something like this. That's just an array. You need a 2D array. So let's try just adding another dimension. Okay, well this also wouldn't work. I put 0 here. Let's just pretend this is a variable called size. So this also wouldn't work, right? Because if we go back here, it'd be 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, and then it stops. So it'd only fill in like the diagonal, right? And so what you actually do here is you need to put like the rows in 1 in the outer for loop. And then we're going to need a nested for loop. And, oops, we got to use a different variable. And so like let's pretend those were predefined variables with like the sizes of the rows and columns. And so that way, what will happen is like, let's go up here. If I 0, right, and then j increases, it'll go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then I will increase and j will start back over at 0 and go through the whole row. So how would you fill in a 2D array? Use a nested for loop. Okay, so how do you pass a 2D array into a function? So this is pretty easy because it's just like a normal array. You just pass it into the function. That sounds a little silly, but so it's just like a normal array, right? So it's just like function name, then array, right? And so like you can choose to pass like the rows and the columns to make whatever you're doing in the array a little easier. So you can also do that, but to pass the array itself, it's just the array name, right? So remember, putting things into an array, putting things out from the array all require for loops, and in a 2D array case, nested for loops. but passing arrays into a function can be done as a whole. So you can pass a regular array, you can pass a 2D array as one whole thing. You don't need a loop. Okay, so my next question is, how would you sum an element in a 2D array? So sum elements in a 2D array. So you're going to be traversing the array, which means we're going to be needing some for loops. And so this is really similar to summing elements in a 1D array. But let's go through it anyways. So we have I is equal to 0 while I is less than rows, I plus plus. And then we'll do a second one. We'll make it j again, because why not? J is equal to 0 while j is less than columns, j plus plus. And then we'll just close off our brackets. Okay. And then then you can just do sum plus equals array of I, comma, j, of I, j. And so we have to assume that the sum was initialized to 0 at the beginning. So that's how you sum the elements in an array. Now, if you wanted to sum like the rows or the columns individually, what you would do is, so like let's say you want to sum just the rows or just the columns, right? Right here, you could do something like a cout sum, and then whatever, how you would put it, and then set the sum equal to 0 and to start over, and then that way it'll print out the sum of each column. And then to do the same thing with rows, you could do, okay, so I messed up a little bit. Doing it like this is actually going to sum the rows, not the columns, because if you watch, I'll go up to the little thing. So if you were trying to sum like 0 and then you were trying to go each column, right, it would sum up the rows, right? It wouldn't sum up the column. So to sum all of them, it's just that, and then you can print out something to sum individual ones here. So, but the outer one, the dimension in the outer for loop is what you're summing. So if we want to sum like the whole array, right, you just sum all of this, like without that. You keep going, and so it's sum the first row, and then it's sum the second row, but it'd be adding it to the sum of the first row. And so it keeps summing it row by row. Now to put this back in, it'd print out the sum of the first row, and then it'd start over summing the second row. So if you wanted to do columns, you have to put columns here and rows here. But that is how you sum elements in a 2D array. So we'll just put using nested for loops and a counter. And so remember, like anytime you like summing stuff, it's typically like use like a counter, something like this, to keep track of the total. Okay, so code. It says to create a 2D array to represent each student's test scores, and then use 4 tests of 5 students, and then print the average of each score. So let's go to online GDB. And so let's create an array. We can do integers. Integers are fine. We'll call it scores. Okay, and so the way I was thinking we could do this one is to have the test be the columns. Have the students be the columns and the test be the rows. So if you have like, sorry for the poor handwriting, my pen's broken. But that's how you would do that kind of. And then that way, like, the test can be, like, summed up like this. And there's a bunch of ways you can do it. You could put the students on the other side, test on the other side. but I just wanted to show you like a different way to look at a 2D array versus just a box. So the rows would be the tests, so there was 4 tests, and the columns are students, so 5 columns. Okay? I think it says, oh, it doesn't tell you which ones to do, so we'll just input them ourselves. So we're going to be having the user input them, so we're going to need some for loops, right? While I is less than 4, I plus plus, and then for int j is equal to 0, j is less than 5, j plus plus. Okay, and then so let's take in all the different scores. Yeah, okay. And so let's see what else we need to do. Okay, got that. Print the average of each test score. Okay, so now what we're gonna wanna do is we're gonna wanna sum up each of the students' test, right? So like, let's say they got like a 90, an 80, and then an 88. We want to add all those up and then divide it by the number of tests. Let's say they got like a 70 on the first test. That's supposed to be a 70. Okay, there you go. And then divide it by the number of tests. So we're going to be adding up each of the columns, which means that the columns need to go in the outer for loop, right? So to keep this clear, we're going to be still using j for here. 5j minus minus, oh, plus, sorry, plus plus. Okay, and then rows on the inside. It's not. Okay. And so I'm switching the use of I and j just so it's clear because the rows always go in front of the j's. I mean, the rows always go in front of the columns. Okay, and then so to create an average, we need a total. To create a total, we need a counter. So I'm going to go up here. I'm going to create int total. And then we can do total plus equals scores of ij. Okay, and then we actually need to set this equal to 0. Okay, and then so once we get out of the loop for the rows, what we can do is we can take the total, divide it by the number of tests, so in this case 4, and so we can see that. So let's say cout student, and then let's do j, open quotes, apostrophe s, test average is, and then we can do total divided by 4, and then in the line. So this should give us what we need, and I did it like this because that way j will print out, so it'll be students. Oh, let's do j plus 1. So it'll be, that way it'll be student 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this should be good. Let's see if this runs. Oh, I didn't put a CL statement. Okay, so yeah, so say the first student got 70, 90, 88, and then an 80. And then the second student got 40, 60, 99, and 74. And then the third student got 67, 89, 74, and 55. And then the I don't know what I'm on. Am I on the third? I think I'm on the fourth. Wow, because this is a lot. But let's say they got a 100. Wow. Then they got 89, 78, 76. And then this is the last student, pretty sure. Let's hope. They got 57, 90, 87, and 77. Okay, great. So we forgot to set the total equal to 0 after this. And while we're there, what we're also gonna do while we're editing is we're gonna see out into the same thing we did there. Student. We'll just do that since J is only declared within here. And it will still notify us whenever we finish with one student. Let's actually drop the number of students down because that was a lot of typing. We're gonna switch it to 3 students. Yay. Yay for easy changes. Anyways, so we're gonna run this. Okay, so we're gonna get, let's do 90, 80, 70, and oh no. That's not good. Did I change the wrong number? Wasn't it 4 tests? I believe it was 4 tests. Oh no, it was. Okay, so let's figure out what the issue is. Okay, so actually we had it in the wrong way when we're CNing, because when we CN like this, we're CNing row by row. So what we'll just do is we'll just change these to J, because I still don't want us to get confused. Because if we want to enter column by column, then we need to pretend like we're summing up all the columns. Okay, and then we're also going to need to change these, right? Because remember, J goes with the columns and I is going with the rows. They don't have to, but it's just easy if you pick one and stick to it. And then it gives us the averages. So this test student 1 test average is 85, student 2's test average is 88, and student 3's test average is 89. And if you were to pull up a calculator, so this works, yeah, so that's how you would do that. So just remember to keep your columns and your rows straight, because it can get a little confusing. So like if your column's on the outside, you're dealing with this whole column, and then you're going to move on to this one. Well, if the rows are on the outside, you're going to be dealing with the whole row, then you move on to the next row. Thank you all for making it all the way through this video. Here's a little way of saying thank you.